this is a funny one because lots of people I talk to say servers are boring. There's nothing new about them, nothing special about them, and I actually disagree. I think there's a ton of cool stuff about servers that maybe people aren't talking enough about. So can you go to some of the details of what you see out there, what things you think are new and cool, and
Yeah, I used to be there too. I used to think it's boring, but um, just what you're seeing now, what's coming out nowadays, just in the last 12 months alone, it vastly overpowers anything that you've seen in the last 5 years, all combined. What they're able to do with Dell PowerEdge servers now, just the amount of hardware and the different technologies that they're throwing in those things, it's unbelievable.
so one of the things that I've heard people talking about is since the server has become so multi-purpose and is used in all sorts of stuff that security is paramount. Now we hear some of our friends, especially the folks at Dell, talk about this root of trust. Can you talk a little bit about what root of trust is and why it's important with security?
Yeah, absolutely. Dell, they want to make everything secure and also scalable. And so being able to do both at once, that's a huge part of their foundation of cyber resilient architecture. Um, Before a server even starts up and gets into the BIOS, as soon as it starts to post, um, Dell starts taking a look at the systems. It starts taking a look at what the chip has, what the storage in there, and it makes sure, has this thing been compromised? Is there any type of rootkits on there, any type of viruses, anything on there that can cause some type of problems? Some person trying to get in there doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and it stops it. Before the operating system even comes up. So they from the root of trust, and root being that starts right at the very very beginning.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense, right? And clearly important, especially nowadays. With all that's going
Oh yeah.
on, we see more and more attempts to exploit um, different weaknesses in people's infrastructure. That's nice to know that starting with the basic hardware, you're starting with a good clean slate. So back to the horsepower for a second. Can you give me an example of how that horsepower may be used with a customer?
Yeah, we have a customer. They were looking to refresh their database environment. It was a massive database environment. It took about 60 servers for what they were using, and so they took a look at Dell's PowerEdge line, and they got that down to 30 servers. They cut it in half, and they're putting just dual socket systems in there. There's very heavy cores, 25 gig I/O modules. Um, the amount of RAM that you can fit in these things now, we're seeing memory up to 3 terabytes per system. Um, but just what you can do now versus what you could do 5 years ago, or even just last year, is incredible. Be able to kind of take what you had in 4 or 5 different racks and shrinking it down to just a single rack, and just having 5x amount of throughput, 5x amount of CPU power, the amount of memory you run whole databases in memory now. So you're not talking to storage to kind of do a query. You query in memory. So it's incredible.
It really is. And I think about that customer you just referenced. I think about the fact that they went from leveraging 60 physical servers to now with the newer technology only using 30. Right? That's a pretty big cost savings right there.
Yeah, you think about it just in terms of networking. It's 30 less systems you need to worry about. 30 less systems in terms of networking, connectivity, management. You're saving a ton on that.
Yeah, no doubt. And as a CTO, right, that's something that we always look at. Cost technology versus the benefit technology. Now, one of the things that has piqued my curiosity is with all these new cores and all this new horsepower,
Yeah.
how do you see that affecting licensing?
This month, VMware's changing the licensing model because of what they're seeing in the hardware market. The ability to fit more and more cores into a single chip, onto a single socket, is incredible. So VMware's changed the licensing model, so now they're limiting it to 32 cores per socket. And if you think about what that was like just a year ago, 32 cores on a single socket, it's incredible. And AMD's coming out with chips that have 64 cores on them. So a lot of VMware's recognizing that. Microsoft is too. And Dell's working with that. Dell recognizes, hey, all these per core type licensing models, it's going to cost a customer a lot of money. And so Dell is working with Microsoft, and they're working with AMD. If you put in AMD second generation EPYC processors, Dell is going to cover the second half of the CPU licensing costs for you. So you'll have to cover the first half of the cores. They're going to cover the second half. So it's incredible. But Dell recognizes what's going on there, and so just being able to do more with less really is what that is, and saving people a lot of money.
Absolutely. Now, under that same guise, that do more with less, all that hardware could be able to run a ton more workloads than before and a much smaller form factor. What about managing these things?
Yeah, well, there's multiple tools. You're talking about from the hardware level. Dell has their Open Manage Enterprise. It's the ability to hook in a whole bunch of systems in there and manage what kind of firmware patches are on this thing, what kind of drivers are on there, security patches. You can put policies all around that, and it automates that. All these complex IT management tasks you have to do, it's going to do it for you with just clicks of a button. It's going to say, all right, let me patch this thing. Let me make sure it has all the latest patches, and it'll work, in conjunction with the operating systems, with VMware. It'll help put hosts into maintenance mode and evacuate all the VMs off that host so it can patch it for you. There's a ton of stuff there, and it's not just virtual servers; it's physical servers also, and storage too. So you can have a single pane of glass where you can take a look and make sure everything's patched, everything's up to date. And really, you can just manage everything from a single pane of glass. And simplicity is where we're trying to do, automating complex tasks, and with elegant control, and help secure your environment and architecture end to end.
It's fantastic. Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about hyperconverged infrastructure, right, or HCI. It's the fastest
Oh yeah,
growing data center
oh yeah.
technology, and essentially servers become the new storage and compute all integrated, right? We've got a pretty cool customer example to share. Can you talk a little about that success story?
Yeah, we had a customer. They put in 20 nodes of VxRail, and it was a couple of different clusters. And it's a true story. Their lead VMware architect was talking to their infrastructure director. In the past, they had a massive environment. Trying to patch this massive environment would take them weeks. You'd have to patch all your ESXi hosts, you'd have to patch your vCenters, all the infrastructure management, firmware, BIOS drivers, everything. With VxRail now, and its lifecycle management, it's just a single click upgrade. So just the ability to just click a button and then sit back and let it do all that stuff that took them weeks before. And now you can just sit back and just watch it happen. And it happens in less than a day. In this particular example, it took about 10 hours to patch a 20 node system without any user involvement, no downtime. It's credible, and it's a real world example, and people are seeing it every day. You think about what you're saving and just operational costs alone when you move to a hyperconverged model.
This is just another great example of tech helping with real world challenges. Today, it's probably overstated, but time is money, right? The quicker you can actually execute on things you're trying to execute on, the better off your business is, and continue to move forward and stay ahead of the competition. So to be able to go to 10 hours from 2 weeks of manual work is pretty impressive. So, all of these cool technologies are coming to the forefront. I would argue that the server is no longer boring, if it ever was in the first place. And if you want to learn about all the different things coming out, all the different technologies, how they can help you with your business, let us know here at Focus Technologies.